Former Governor Vicky Cayetano wants to be the next mayor of Honolulu. We all know why because we've seen his commercials. But who's the man behind the tough exterior? We'll find out today when we sit down with him and his wife Vicky to find out more about their life in Hawaii. Do you mind introducing the dogs?
Yes, this is Snowy, and this is Houdini, and they're both retired show dogs, and every day with them is just another day in paradise. We have 6 Bichons, 3 Terriers, and 1 German Shepherd. Our family really advocates rescue because you're giving an animal a second chance at life. Secondly, there are so many already out there that we need to do everything we can so that we don't have to put down as many animals as we have to.
One of my priorities will be to try and make the city more dog friendly or more pet friendly. You go to Europe and you see the dogs with their owners, at the cafes and things like that. And I think here, oftentimes, regulations are made by people in the bureaucracy who look at it from a very narrow, perspective, and not so much, from the perspective of the people as a whole.
What was your conversation like when you discussed whether or not you should run?
Well, I used to come home and complain a lot.
He was very, very concerned about what was going on, and expressed that. And we're both the kind of people that say, if you see something you need to change, you need to get in there and do it.
What are you hearing from the community?
The people have been really nice to both of us, and during this election, it's been incredible.
Mm-hmm.
I got a lot of people coming up to me and saying, thank you for running and that kind of thing, and so we've been lucky.
Yeah, I have to echo that, and especially the women. They'll come up and give me a really big hug. In fact, I sometimes say, oh, do I know this person? But I find that they're very passionate about their support for him in this race and very appreciative. Multiple times they say to me, oh, thank you for letting him run. Well, if you know my husband is not letting him. If he wants to do it, he's going to do it. Or tell him how much we appreciate he's coming out of retirement to lead the charge, as they say. So it's been very passionate and very supportive.
I think people, they wanted a choice, and there's a great sentiment out there, I believe, that felt that the last time they voted on the rail project, they didn't have the information that they needed. And as time went by and they got to know more and more, you see that, according to the polls anyway, the tide of public opinion now has reversed itself. And over and over again, I get people coming up to me and say, thanks, thanks for running because now we have a choice. And, this is not an ideological election. This is I have Republicans who never voted for me in their lives, coming up to me and saying that. It's an election about, I think, the city, fiscal responsibility, and that kind of thing.
And transparency.
And transparency. That's the big. I think one of the big issues. People feel like the project has been railroaded or rammed down their throats, And I supported Peter Carlisle the last time, and he had an opportunity to deal with some of the transparency issues. Unfortunately, he did not, and I think that's why, usually the incumbent has a big edge, and that's why this election is going to be different.
How will your style as mayor be different from either Peter Carlisle or Kirk Caldwell?
Well, Peter has publicly said we should leave the rail, for example, to the professionals, and I disagree with that. I think that you need the professionals to do the engineering, but in the end, the professionals should be advising you, and you make the final decision. When Kirk says that he's hands-on, well, he hasn't had his hands on many things because the parks are in disrepair, the roads are filled with potholes, the sewers have been neglected, and he had a chance to do it.
You both have taken a risk in a sense because the powers that be in Hawaii are on the other side and they support the rail project. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I've been in politics a long time, 30 years, and this town really has been run by a few people, a select group of people, you know. Usually they have ties into big business and, of course, big labor. And more often than not, they're well-intended. But that's not the way things should work here. You know, whether you're choosing the university president, the football coach, or you're talking about increasing the cost of utilities, people should have some voice in that. And that's not what's been happening here. Basically, what I find here today is a select few operating like the Big Five used to operate when I was a boy and my parents were, were raising me. So what you have is a power shift from one group to another. And that's what I think is resonating in this election. People don't like that. They don't like a powerful person coming out and saying, I think this person should run, or you should vote for this person, you know. When I drive by a union workers sign holding, some of them will look at me and say, Ben, don't worry. And I take that to mean, no matter what their union bosses say, they're going to support me because they agree with what I'm doing, you see. And so, I think that's a big issue in this campaign.
No, I think more from a personal perspective to say that's what I love most about my husband is that he always stands up for the average person, and he has the strength to stand up to special interest groups, and that reflects a lot of what I believe. I really appreciate that in him.
Actually, I'm excited about this election, more so in a different way, more so than my other 8 elections, because as you said, you know, all of the power is on the other side, and with the support that we've been getting, really, I like being in this position, because if I get elected, I really think it's going to be the start of maybe a little change in the way politics is run here in Hawaii.
How do you feel when you hear the personal attacks against you?
It's a sign of how desperate the opposition is and how much is involved from their standpoint. Talking about literally billions of dollars. And, what's unfortunate about it is that it doesn't really enlighten people on the issues. It's really campaigning at its worst, you know. But I think that it's turned around, and I really feel that it's backfired, because the people who put this together, I think, forget that this is Hawaii. And people here, I think, have a greater sense of fairness about how things should be done, you know. And actually, I feel sorry for the kid who's running this thing. He's young. And one thing about elections, they really reveal and test character, you know. And he has a life that's going to go on after this election is over. But what he's done and what they've done will linger with them for a while. And I think that once this election is over and we win, and I think we will win, PRP has some very, very serious imaging restoring to do. Because right now, I don't think they're looked upon as being a respectable organization.
You've had shots fired at your campaign signs, car tires slashed at your campaign headquarters. Is this the roughest campaign you've been through?
It's the roughest campaign because my past campaigns have been basically where we argue on issues, and sometimes that gets a little distorted. But in this one here, you're talking about deliberate, distortion of facts. You're talking about falsehoods, you know. Mm-hmm. And that makes it different. And what really bothers me, you never get used to it, is basically attacking my character. And, you know, you never get used to something like that. Well, I think what's really bad is that, besides, you know, them going after me, is that they also they harken back into the past, and they hurt other people. people who don't deserve to be hurt, you know. And I think that's not only unfortunate, but it just angers me that that happens. It's one thing for them to come after me. It's another thing for them to go back 15 years and attack people who have not done anything wrong. That's the way I look at it.
Do you want to talk about the Truth Squad, maybe who they are and how they're helping you?
When I announced my candidacy, and you know, I came out of retirement, I think within a month or two, these former cabinet members started coming on. And most of them I didn't know. I knew who they were, but I didn't have any kind of relationship with them. And so they came from 4 administrations. Toy Ari and Sam Kaleo from Frank Fossey, and Malcolm Tom, Pat McCain, and Ron Lim from Jeremy Harris, Stanley Shiraki from Eileen Anderson's cabinet, and let me see, Rod Haraga and Eric Takamura from Mufi Hanneman's cabinet. Then we have Professor Panos Pavadaros from the University of Hawaii, and we've added a few since then. Janice Taramay, an attorney, and Peter Lee, also an attorney. They're a cracker bunch. You know, they've taught me a lot about the city, and frankly, I think without them, I would not have been knowledgeable about the issues as I could be. We win this election, they're going to help me set up the city. Yeah.
What was your favorite experience when you were in office?
Being governor is a great job. Yeah. In fact, some of my colleagues who were former governors and became U.S. senators, a couple of them left the Senate to become governor again because it's a totally different kind of job. Awesome responsibilities, a lot of pressure, but you know, to be selected for this one job out of a population of 1.2 million is quite an honor. For me, though, my favorite, I think, time was when we set up the A+ program. I was lieutenant governor then, and we did it in less than a year, and we put it in all of the schools. And the first time that it went into effect, we had 20,000 kids in it, and later on it reached a peak of about 28,000. But you had to have the right people in place. So the governor said, okay, go ahead and do it. And then the superintendent of education was Charlie Taguchi, who's a close friend of mine. And if it weren't for Charlie, we probably will not be able to do it because the school, the principals and the teachers were very reluctant to have their classrooms used. So with that kind of combination, we were able to accomplish it. And I used to be a latchkey kid myself back in a day when it was much safer, when we didn't lock our doors and people in the neighborhood knew each other. Kids today don't have that kind of protection. And so this program, even though I was lieutenant governor, is probably the highlight of all the things that I got involved in. Yeah.
For me, it would be 2 moments. One was visiting Kalaupapa, and the other was visiting the island of Niihau. It's not to say that greeting heads of state like the President of China or the President of the United States wasn't a great honor, but it was to say that these 2 visits were the most memorable in my life, I would say, really special. I think both of them had one thing in common, that was to get an upfront view of what Hawaii was like before. Niihau was still very back in the days Hawaii, maybe 50 years ago. And I think it brings out in many ways the best of people. And so being able to talk to them, it was just so special because we communicated not in what we normally do day to day by talking, but in a very special way, by touch, by looking into each other's eyes, and really having an understanding of how they feel about you.
When you were children, did you ever think about becoming what you are today?
No.
No.
Definitely not for me. Yeah.
When I wrote my book, I concluded that no one who achieves any kind of success really gets from here to there without some luck, hard work, of course, but people popping up in your lives, in your life, people sometimes you never expected, who kind of nudge you one way or the other. And that's the story of my life and my career. So, did I ever expect that I would become governor of this state? No, never did. Not in my wildest dreams.
Yeah, for me, I mean, my parents raised me with the things that I do appreciate today. Music, for example. I remember Dad always saying that if you need food for your body, you need music for your soul. So indirectly, yes, but not to say specifically, oh, I knew this is what was going to happen. But I also knew that I would love being with people because I was raised in a very large family. And I always enjoyed being with people and enjoying music and arts and animals. So I think that kind of comes very naturally.
Governor, tell me about your family.
I have one brother, and my father was a single parent and raised my brother and I. And he worked at the Outrigger Canoe Club as a waiter, and he'd go to work in the morning, leave, catch the bus maybe about 7:30 in the morning, but he wouldn't come back till about 9:30, 10 o'clock in the evening. So in between, my brother and I were alone, but it taught us character, I think, and also how to take care of ourselves. That was the kind of life that I had growing up. And looking back, it was not an unhappy life. I grew up in Kalihi. We didn't have much, but so it was the same with the people around me. So you never notice, If you never had a stake in your life, you'll never miss it. And it wasn't until I graduated from high school and I went to the mainland that things began to open up for me. And I developed a broader understanding of life and people.
I think our upbringing was so different because I was brought up in a very large family. So poor Ben, when the family comes to visit, he has a house full of people. And of course, our daughter's getting married this weekend. And so we're very busy with that. And then I miss my son. He's in the Navy, and he's stationed in Norfolk right now. So he's learning about sacrifice because he would love to have come back for the wedding. But as he says, it's not my life. It's what the military wants from me. So he's not able to come back. And we get an appreciation of what our men and women in service do for our country firsthand.
With your different backgrounds, what do you find that you have in common?
I think sometimes, it's the yin and the yang that balances. And in many ways, we are very different. But I think our values are very much alike. So where I think it matters, we're very much in sync. But there's no question that we're also different in our personalities. But I think that's what the Chinese believe in. You have to have the yin and yang to have the right balance.
Vicky is much cool-tempered than I am. I'm more, I have a temper. Not so much with family, but with things that happen outside. In that sense, we're different, but we're both, I think, aggressive people in seeking our own goals and objectives, which oftentimes are the same.
What do you love about each other the most?
My wife is a very generous person, and she's kind. Sometimes too kind, I think, but those are the qualities about her that I really I love.
And I love that for all of his tough demeanor, he's a very compassionate and warm person. I really love that about Ben, and that he always feels for those who cannot speak for themselves. He stands up for them.
You both have done so well in your life. What advice do you have for today's youth?
I volunteered to teach a class at my high school, Farrington High School. And I recall talking to a student, and this guy's a senior, and he was working at one of the hotels part-time, and he was putting in a lot of hours, and I asked him, why are you working so hard? And he said, I want to get in. He was telling me that after he finished high school, that was his goal, And I thought that was a little too low. And so I told him, because I knew he was smart from the class, and his name was Jason, and I said, Jason, follow your dreams, shoot for the highest, you know, target that you want. And if you don't make it, you can always go back and work for the hotel. But if you don't try, you know, you won't know. And maybe when you're older, you'll have a regret that you didn't, you know, do this or that. I also tell the kids to prepare because I spoke at a graduation on Maui, and I congratulated the students, but I also said, you know, you're not done. You know, you gotta keep learning because the people out there want people who are, you know, up on things, and so every day should be a learning experience for you, whether you want to be a chef or anything else. And that's the way the world is today. And I tell minority kids in particular, people don't care now really what the color of your skin is. What they care about is what's between your two ears, you know, your brains and your knowledge and all of that. And so prepare. And that's what I've done in my life.
I would echo that, and because when I see a lot of young people, I find that they're thinking too far ahead of. Everybody wants to be the CEO. I say live in the moment, do the best with what you have today, and tomorrow will take care of itself. I think that's really important. They're planning too far out. Well, there's not going to be that future if you don't do what you're doing now and do it well, whatever the job is. I used to wait help when I was going to school, and I really took pride in being the best waitress. Oh, I can anticipate your needs, you're a regular customer, you know. I took a lot of pride in that, just as much as running a business. And I think that's the message I would have for young people, and what I share with them is don't plan too far out, don't keep thinking of being a CEO. Do what you're doing today, enjoy it, and do it well, the best you can be in any job, and tomorrow will find itself well.
Why didn't you ever run for a congressional seat?
I did not want to go to Washington, D.C. You know, when I was governor and when I was lieutenant governor, I went there a lot. And I didn't like the lifestyle there. You know, it's a little too, like you said, you know, you want a friend in D.C., you buy yourself a dog. I wanted to stay home and have my family here. I never thought about running for mayor either. You know, I wasn't interested in sewers and that kind of thing. I was more interested in the state issues, education. But I think I'm in this race because beyond sewers and water and all of that is the process. You know, the way things are being done, I don't like. And I'm in it to try and change things.
No, I'm very excited about this race and hoping that Ben becomes the next mayor because I'm so impressed with the team that he's already has helping him and the Truth Squad. They're all so knowledgeable, so experienced, and want to make a difference. And I think this fresh change is going to make a big difference to the future of our city and the present. And personally, I love being out there, listening to people, and feeling like I can, you know, be more accessible sometimes than he can be, but being able to share with him what people are talking about and what they're concerned about.